Chapter 10, Escalation. Like escalation of plot escalation, or... Because things escalated quite a bit romantically yesterday. You know what I mean. The following day, the soreness was only marginally worse than the previous day. The residual headache I'd had was gone, though. Nice. Either way, Quill and I both slept in. Or tried. Quill received an early call that woke us both, and there was no real sleeping after that. I dragged myself out of bed after Quill and staggered from the loft for some morning coffee. Comfortable as his sofa was, it really couldn't compare to his bed. As I prepared coffee for us both, I listened in on his call, which seemed to be about yesterday. Look at this guy. Aw, he's in his sleepwear. Poor guy, he's got his hair clipped up, hasn't had his first cup of coffee yet. Poor baby. Quill hung up before I was finished and joined me a few minutes later, wrapping his arms around me for a quick kiss before taking over. I stepped back to let him only because I'd learned he was particular about his coffee needs, and I wasn't. And I tried to keep the smile about his hair to myself. You're stronger than I am. We'd had that talk before. You had that talk and I wasn't invited? Morgan? I thought we were friends, man. Why wasn't I privy to this conversation? Duh.
They've opened an investigation about the accident, as expected. They're contacting everyone to give full witness statements.
That made sense. We'd only given brief reports at the scene. It was obvious they would want more from us. When does it need to happen?
At our convenience.
I guess it's good you took a few days off. He handed me a cup of coffee, and I took a sip, staring at him over the rim. Quill, what's wrong?
A preliminary examination of the car suggests it may have been tampered with.
Wow! No way! I don't know what to do. I mean, like, I'm not really shocked by it. But I also don't want to be like, well, what does it mean? Because, I feel like that's pretty obvious. So, I don't know. I'd be curious to see what he thinks. Does he think it's far-fetched? I'll go with the cautious one. That seems quite far-fetched, doesn't it?
I'm not sure anymore. A lot has been going on politically in Nisa the past couple of months. The entire meeting with Ruben had to do with that.
Are you suggesting this had something to do with the referendum?
Or maybe the Arensol investigation.
That would mean there was a very specific target to that car incident. And that it was him. Or you. Either one, or both, if they could get you.
I don't know. I don't know what I'm suggesting. I just think it's a rather big coincidence that we happen to be right in the path of a car that appears to have been tampered with.
Right? He ran a tired hand down his face.
That's all I'm saying.
He meant himself, even though he said we, of course. I don't know, girl. But for someone to attack him in a crowd meant we were being followed or spied on.
I'm going to call Ruben to check on him.
Ruben?
Maybe I'm being paranoid, but I'd rather be sure that he made it out of Arcalis safely.
I watched him return to where he'd left his HCD. Then, because I needed to have my hands busy, I took over finishing his coffee. Was it Quill being paranoid, or did he have a valid concern here? The easiest solution was that it was an accident, but the investigation would determine that. If they confirmed the car had been tampered with, was it a prank? A protest? An assassination attempt? Surely no one would go that far. From behind me, I heard Quill's voice as Ruben apparently answered. He didn't give any details about what had happened, or even a hint that anything had happened. Maybe he didn't want to worry him, or maybe it was concern about the call being monitored. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. I was a little surprised he contacted him again, actually, but maybe it would be more suspicious if you don't contact Ruben anymore, because then you're tipping your hand that you know you're being monitored. Meh. So now what happens?
I suppose we wait. With the state of our safety department, an investigation like this will take a while. I wish I could say otherwise, but they're quite understaffed.
Maybe it's time for more funding.
I've been fighting for that for years. But if they find the culprit, it obviously will answer any questions we may have.
And if they don't?
I don't know.
I wrapped my arms around him, leaning my head against the back of his shoulder. So what were the options? It was an accident, or... It was not an accident, but it was still a coincidence we were at the scene. Or... Quill was deliberately targeted by someone because of his very public opposition to the referendum for public recognition. And last, that Quill was targeted by someone because they discovered he was investigating Arnsal. The last two. Quill, do you know if Locke spoke to Vic Sager yesterday at some point? Maybe when you were on your way home from Morelli? Quill turned to me, frowning.
Why do you ask?
I didn't mention before because we had other things to talk about, but I met Vic at the NRI building yesterday, on my way out. He walked me to the lobby after my tour was finished.
What was he doing there?
He said he was meeting with an acquaintance.
Did he tell you he spoke to Locke?
Yes. Something has been bothering me about his conversation with me. I mean, I try not to jump to assumptions, particularly that someone was behind a possible assassination attempt. So I guess I've been trying to dismiss it, but I just have this feeling.
I can't say for sure. They didn't talk where I could see, but we weren't together the entire time, so it's possible they spoke. I'd have to call him and check.
Vic knew you had been in Morelli, and also seemed to be aware that you'd returned and were waiting for me. The latter might have been an assumption. But he said he spoke with Locke when you were on your way back, so I'd assume that meant right before you left, right after you got back, or during the trip.
Wasn't the latter, that's for sure.
I don't know why, but I keep remembering that right before we parted ways, he told me to be careful on the way home. It's so small, it seems stupid to fixate on it. It's a normal thing to say. There was something so smug about the way he said it. Maybe it's just my imagination.
We've had this talk. I need to verify with Locke. I can't imagine him talking to Vic and casually mentioning we were out of the city. I don't want to call him, though. If Ruben is correct that I'm being monitored, it would be best to avoid that. And if we're being watched, it might seem suspicious if Locke shows up here. In the best case, this is all paranoia. In the worst, I'd much prefer them to assume we have no idea what is happening.
How did dating a novelist turn into literally living in a crime novel? You don't even write crime novels. Quill let out a strained laugh, pulling me back to him for a tight hug.
Damn it. How did we get to the point we're even talking about this sort of thing?
I'm not sure. Sorry.
I think we should go talk to Vale. Have them confirm with Locke. If they meet up or talk, it won't be as suspicious. And, well, we've become pretty good at ferrying messages through intermediaries.
True.
But first, I'm going to have some damn coffee. And if I find out Sager was behind this, I'll punch that stupid face myself.
I will cheer you on.
Endangering people like that.
He grumbled to himself as he finally went to have his coffee. Quill went to Vale's place alone to explain the situation, then came back and buried himself in some documents Ruben had given to them. Apparently, Ruben liked to record hard copies of things, and he had given copies of a lot of his research to Quill. I also took some of the pile, and we spent the next few hours poring over the information. Ruben had nothing concrete on the lab Rory was from, but he said he would keep looking into it, and to try to find any evidence of what happened to Avery. He had located at least one potentially connected rumor, a laboratory in Delphine that was purportedly doing geological surveys. It had gone dark around the time Rory said he believed the escape happened, but there was no way to verify for sure if they were connected. That was almost a side concern at this point. Much more pressing were the Triad's potential connections to Nisa, but Quill had all that information. I set aside the notebook I was going through and stretched. We'd been working for 2 hours by that point anyway. Time for a break. Quill didn't look at me as I stepped around the wall of his office, or when I moved closer to him, so I draped my arms over his shoulders, resting my chin on his head. Busy? He still didn't look up at me, but let out a soft, annoyed huff.
Yes. Now go away.
Fine, fine. I'll leave you alone. But you should take a break soon. You've been over here for a while already. He didn't respond. Aw, stop. That is so sweet. I think this is one of my favorite CGs. It's just so cute. Aw. I love that. But when I tried to straighten, he'd grabbed both my arms, crossing them over his chest and refusing to let go. Quill, it's very difficult to leave when you're holding my arms.
Weird.
You told me to leave.
So?
What a brat. He was always like this. Tugging my arms free, I set them on his shoulders and, as he reached up to grab them again, started to massage the base of his neck with gentle kneading motions. Hey! Our other science experiment is finally happening. Quill's hands froze, then dropped back to his desktop. I was surprised that there was a fair amount of give, though maybe not as much as a human. Or maybe he was just that tense. Quill let out a soft groan and let his head drop as I kept massaging the way I would have with anyone else. Ooh, okay. Noted. He likes the massage.
Ugh. Don't stop.
Feels good?
Well, I'm not acting this way because I hate it.
I laughed a little. Honestly, there was a point where I was going to ask you if you liked massages, but I never got around to it. I wasn't sure if it would be beneficial or maybe just a nice tactile experience, if that makes sense.
Synthetic muscle fibers can build up tension the same as human muscles, I guess. Well, not the same way, but close. I won't say no to a massage either way.
I'm glad to hear that. Doh. And then a smoochy smooch on the hand. Quill reached up and took one of my hands again, pulling it forward so he could turn his head to plant a kiss in the palm.
Did you need a break from all the reading?
Can't focus. But I thought you were the one that could use a break the most.
I was taking one already, sort of.
A quick glance at his monitor revealed he'd been sending a message despite the papers scattered in front of him. Oh, sending another message to Meredith?
We've somewhat established a friendly conversation about my niece and her sister.
Meaning me and my mother.
I'll let you read the last message, but your family is doing well.
Glad to hear it. What are you sharing about your niece?
That she's settling in and looking into some of the work options here. That there's a research group that's caught her eye.
You know what? With everything going on, I totally forgot we were trying to make contact with Mom. So, glad to get an update that actually is working. Hooray! I'm looking forward to when I can talk to them myself again. I leaned down and pressed a kiss to his temple. But thank you for continuing to relay messages back and forth.
Back to thanking me for things you shouldn't have to thank anyone for.
Always. That said, why don't you take a break for a while? A proper one. I would suggest a walk, but at this point I don't even know if I want to go for a walk anymore. Next time we might nearly get hit by an Airbus or something.
One hopes we won't have to avoid going out from now on, but I'm not up for it today either. Maybe we'll just order a late lunch and...
He tipped his head up and smiled a little.
It would be nice to spend some time together. No talking about vehicle collisions, outside drama, Sager, or anything else.
That sounds good to me. He stood and stretched, a behavior that I somehow found charming, before he turned to pull me in for a gentle kiss.
Are you really feeling okay?
I'm fine. You? If you're worried my few cuts and bruises have me in agonizing pain, the answer is no. And... you?
Already back to normal. I wasn't hurt that badly anyway.
Good. Quill released me and pulled me away from his desk as he shifted the conversation to discuss food. Of course, no matter how much we tried to have a normal day, there was the lurking thought of things like calls being monitored and worse. But there was little we could do to address it for now. We had a quiet day, somewhat listless at times as we alternately read or curled up together for comfort and closeness. And when we went to bed, I lay curled against him, still in awe we'd reached this point. I had strayed so far from the comforting sameness of my day-to-day life in Cisalis, caught up in things I could never have dreamed of. Granted, I doubted many people dreamed of getting caught up in some sort of dangerous political game. It was terrifying, infuriating, overwhelming if I thought about the worst possibilities. But I also couldn't quite have imagined meeting Quill, and that, at least, was something I could be grateful for. Very, very grateful. I knew that tomorrow would arrive and bring with it all the problems we'd been avoiding dealing with. This surely isn't what I think Quill had in mind when he took time off from council work. But tomorrow would have to be dealt with when it arrived. I closed my eyes and tried my best to get some sleep. I expected there to still be a lot more residual damage.
Well, it's been 2 days. They couldn't leave this place a mess that long.
It's just that the safety department is so understaffed, the investigation will progress slowly. So I didn't expect maintenance teams to manage repairs this fast.
Maintenance has the benefit of machine assistance.
I suppose that's true.
The curb is still a mess, though.
He wasn't wrong there. There was a huge chunk of it broken off, and a spiderweb of cracks from where the car had first jumped it. Not much else, though. We walked to the end of the street before we crossed to the other side together. There had been almost no public updates on the state of the investigation regarding the out-of-control vehicle, which I suppose was to be expected. Vale and Rory had passed through the area yesterday to see if Vale could pick up on any psychometric echoes, even the tiniest thread, to see who tampered with the vehicle and when, if anyone did. Something like this wouldn't be admissible in any investigation, but could be invaluable to us. But they'd already said that psychometry wasn't their strength, and it might be difficult to pick up on it given the car would have been altered at another location and sent here. Unless it was tampered with remotely, either one would be difficult to track with psychometry. Of course, that was why Quill and I were revisiting the area today anyway. I doubted my usual tingles would be of much help here, but it was worth trying, just in case. I'd surprised myself before. Quill and I stopped at a corner next to a barrier post. Hello. I expanded my sphere, but tried to search for Psi instead of looking at everything around me. I didn't really know how to do that, and I wasn't sure what psychometric echoes looked like. There was a sense of something like that. Veins of brightness threaded through the street like Ariadne's thread, but following them would have been impossible. I had no idea how to isolate any of them, or if any of them were actually psychometric residue.
No luck.
Not really. I don't know what I'm looking for, or at.
Don't feel bad. It was a long shot anyway.
I should have come with Vale so I could try to mimic them instead of groping around without knowing what I'm doing.
How exactly does mimicking someone work anyway? How do you observe Psi exactly?
I can sort of see it. It's a little difficult to describe. It's like a mental image, but it's not just in my head. But it also is.
Like a hallucination.
It sounds weird when you say it that way, but maybe it's not that far off. Vale doesn't know if all queens perceive Psi this way, or if it's a unique method. For me, Psi looks sort of like colored smoky light. I can match the form, structure, actions, and color of my Psi to someone else's, and that's how I visualize the mimicry. He put an arm around me, directing me further down the sidewalk. We had already discussed that it wasn't wise to look like we were searching for anything. And I was reminded again of the oddness of our situation, and the danger. If we were being watched or followed, it might not even be safe to be outside right now. But what else could we do?
It's a shame you don't have a larger pool of Espers to practice mimicking. You'd have that if you went to Endgame.
I'm perfectly happy with a limited pool of Espers to practice with, thank you very much.
I guess when you observe someone like me, you don't see anything at all.
I don't see any psi energy, but I wouldn't say I don't see anything. I see you, after all. That's more than enough. He laughed a little, his hand sliding down to mine so he could bring it to his lips. Aw, cute.
I'm glad to hear that. Feels like it might be more useful if I did have Psi right about now.
I wouldn't say that. Look at how useless I've been, and I supposedly have more than anyone.
Morgan, how can you even say that? You saved my life, and who knows how many others that day. You can't always solve every problem with your magical Esper powers. No one expects that from you.
I just feel bad that I can't do more. My smile faded as we walked, and I leaned against him, once again expanding my sphere to search around us, just in case. What good was this stupid power when it only sometimes did what I wanted it to do?
I think I'm going to accept an interview soon and start laying the foundation for a proper roadmap to official recognition. I don't think we can push back against this avalanche anymore, not when they're willing to go to these lengths. So we can only take control of the situation so that it favors us, and so that trying to take us out of the equation doesn't matter.
Then I can set that up when we get home. Do you think it's possible to come up with a realistic roadmap on a timeline that at least slows this whole thing down?
We'll find out, I guess.
So Quill was deciding to play their game a little. I suppose it made sense. Someone was trying to force his hand, so there weren't many options. The insular nature of Nisa had its benefits, but in cases like this, it was a drawback. It was difficult to create movements with the same momentum you could outside where there were so many more people, and trying to could create disastrous infighting like we were seeing now. I could understand Quill's fear about Nisa essentially devouring itself from internal conflict, so rather than a full pushback, he was going to try to redirect onto a more palatable path, like a compromise. I only hoped it worked. Quill and I stopped at a cafe for lunch, and I kept practicing expanding and retracting my sphere the entire time. I expanded it up all the way to where I could feel the edges of that dead space caused by the psi dampeners around the dome, something I hadn't even been aware of when I first teleported in. We treated it as much like a normal date as we could. Quill pointed out that if we were being watched, going out as normal was to our benefit, since staying inside might suggest we were paranoid about going out. Accidents didn't make people paranoid, so if we acted out of the ordinary, it might not work in our favor. And again, I wish my theokinetic ability was a little more consistent. How did I make it more consistent? I needed to see if Vale had tips, because I hated trying to rely on something that didn't like being reliable. I kept my sphere expanded anyway, trying to work out how to detect someone watching us, and trying to block out as much information feedback as possible to home in on certain people. Then Quill teased me about taking my people watching to uncomfortable levels, and that completely broke my concentration. We had been out quite a while before we went back home, with only a quick stop at the committee office so Quill could touch base with a colleague there, despite that he was supposed to be off. Look, I'm extremely dubious any scientist would do that at an archaeological dig. Maybe in their habitat, depending what it's like and how much room it has. But not in the ruins.
Morgan, there is something that us writing types like to call creative license.
I laughed as I paused right in the entry of the flat to take off my shoes. I'm just saying that it does not pass my willing suspension of disbelief.
Oh, come on. The exciting aspect is that it's somewhere you shouldn't be having a tryst.
That what you guys talking about? Good grief.
The important thing about appealing to a reader is knowing when to suspend disbelief.
But, setting aside the sheer irresponsible aspect, it can't possibly be comfortable. Or sanitary.
That's why it's fiction. No one cares about that sort of thing. They just want the steamy parts.
I can't believe this is a conversation we're having with you right now. Quill followed right behind me, and as I stepped into the kitchen, shrugging out of my jacket. Whoa. Uh-oh. That's not good. I stopped short, right past the iron stairs up to the loft, almost doubling over as a powerful sensation of danger hit me. Why now?
Morgan.
I gripped his arm hard, shaking my head frantically. Something was off. Something was wrong. I wasn't sure what to do or where this was coming from. So many possibilities and thoughts were flying through my head. A bomb? Someone is hidden in the apartment ready to stab one of you guys? I put my arm across Quill's chest, keeping him from moving further inside as I put a finger to my lips. To my relief, he paused in place, giving me a wide-eyed look of uncertainty. I expanded my sphere through the apartment and realized right away that someone was crouched behind the half wall of Quill's workspace. Intruder. It felt like my heart froze. There was a faint reddish-orange glow around them, similar to the color of Rory's eye. A rook. Yeah, that. A rook. The moment my sphere touched their much smaller one, they moved. At first I thought they were attacking, and I shoved Quill behind me, erecting a shield. But no, the person darted away from the work area and fled toward the terrace. They must have sensed my sphere when it touched theirs and realized they couldn't take us by surprise. Someone was able to hire one of the few Espers in the city to act as a assassin? For a moment I was too stunned to act, but as they reached the terrace door, which I realized was open, it occurred to me I shouldn't let them escape. We needed answers, because this couldn't be a coincidence. Well, we're not confident, so... Cyburst time. Wait! I don't know why I shouted it. It's not like the intruder was going to politely pause for me and ask what I needed. I remembered the little Veil had taught me about Cybursts and held out a hand, gathering a small bundle of energy there to throw at them. My aim was decidedly off. It hit the ground next to them, partially because I didn't want to hurt them, and partially because I didn't want Quill to hurt me if I shattered the glass door. Whoa! That is an outfit. That is definitely an outfit. A lady? I'm guessing? Judging by the curves? Okay. Interesting. The warning that was supposed to encourage the person to stop instead encouraged them to whip a gun out, whirl around, and fire it at me. Okay. I flung the shield back up on instinct and lifted my arms over my face as it reverberated under the force of sonic impact. By the time I recovered enough to bolt after them, I reached the door to see the intruder had come to a precarious stop atop the wall of the terrace. They spotted me, fumbling the gun as they tried to aim again. It clattered to the ground and they took it as their cue to leave. Okay, not very experienced with a gun. They went over the edge like it was nothing. No! Horror lodged in my throat as I expanded my sphere again, only to be strangely relieved when I realized they had jumped from our building to a lower roof nearby. Not something I'd have been brave enough to try. But they were leaving now, having left only a trail of broken pot plants in their wake from where they scaled the wall. Quill was at my side in seconds. They jumped off the building to the one next to us and are running away. As one does, I suppose.
I'd be running too if you shot at me with mind energy. As one does, I suppose. What were you thinking? You should have let them leave.
I don't know! I shot at them because that's what you do to intruders to make them stop intruding and answer questions.
Well, I guess you were half successful then. They stopped intruding anyway.
I let out a sigh, relief flooding me at the same time the adrenaline evaporated. So that happened. I wandered to the terrace wall where they dropped their weapon. We did at least get that. Even rooks have their clumsy moments, I guess. With this, can we assume the car accident wasn't an accident and someone really has it out for you? Not wanting to touch any evidence, I decided to leave the weapon where it was for now. I hope this isn't just a common occurrence with you anyway.
No, I think this is definitely not a good sign. I wonder what made them bolt like that, though. Who lies in wait only to run away when their targets show up?
I sensed something was off when we entered the apartment and expanded my sphere to look around. When it collided with theirs, I think they must have realized the surprise attack was out of the question. Maybe they weren't prepared to deal with another Esper.
I can't believe you broke my floor tiles out here.
I was trying to fire a warning shot. At least I didn't break the door. He shifted around the broken tiles with his toe before he joined me, surveying the damage to the shelves.
I suppose if this is the only damage, I shouldn't complain. You're getting good at those shields.
It was mostly just instinct. Not exactly a pro just yet.
From the way they turned tail and fled right away, I'm not sure they were either.
I guess it might be hard to find trained assassins here in Nisa.
One hopes.
Now what? Call the safety department? They dropped their weapons, so we have evidence of some kind anyway.
There's that at least.
Quill didn't get the chance to call the safety department. We did a quick check of the apartment, though I knew there was no one else inside, just to see if anything had been touched or meddled with. Quill was certain the person had tried to log into his desktop device. We were in the middle of that when he received an incoming call from Locke.
Locke, what is it? On your way? Why? No. Ugh, look, we kind of have a situation that we're... What? Yeah. Okay. We'll be waiting then.
He disconnected and stared down at the device for a long time. What is it?
Locke is on his way. We need to hold off calling anyone else, I think.
What's going on?
We aren't the only ones targeted this time.
Oh no. Whoa, what are you wearing? That's a great shirt. I love it.
I don't think they realized I was home. I had a meeting scheduled, but it was delayed, so I hadn't left yet. And I was fortunate to see them before they saw me. I had barely enough time to react. My sofa was destroyed by their stupid gun, but I'm in one piece.
You were fortunate it was just a sofa.
Yeah, they weren't that determined. I think they were relying on a swift ambush, and when it didn't work, they retreated. Well, it helped that a neighbor heard the fuss and started banging on the door as well. The attacker wasn't interested in drawing attention.
So they weren't an Esper?
If they were, I have no way of knowing. They didn't seem to be, but I suppose they could have been a rook.
You were fortunate they retreated.
I am quite aware of that, believe me. I took 10 minutes to stop hyperventilating. Then we had to call the safety department to file a report. But of course, they have no reason to not believe it was a standard armed break-in. Nothing was missing, but they said I probably interrupted them before they could do anything.
It's the logical assumption, of course, but under the circumstances.
I can't believe the two of you were targeted as well. I thought it was just my turn or whatever, but now... Look, I wasn't going to tell you this because it was just a precaution and I didn't think anyone needed to know. But I sent Aerith and Neil to Safe House 08. I did it after the car incident, actually.
What's Safe House 08?
What it sounds like. A safe house. A bunker. I think I mentioned they made a bunch of them around the time the city was founded. This one is beyond the settled portions.
But why did you send Neil and Aerith there specifically? Just because they also now know about the Arnsal? But why wouldn't you send Vale and Rory there too? Locke, you worry me a little bit. I want to trust you, Locke, but I'm a little worried. I didn't realize any of the safe houses were still active. You didn't mention that part.
A few of them are, yes. They've been forgotten for the most part, left empty for years. Not many people even know about them anymore. I came across one some time ago doing a maintenance survey of the settled edge. That's how I learned where it was. When I first brought others into the situation with the Arnsal League, I thought it would be good to have a place to meet. That wasn't my flat.
All we've done is meet in your flat.
Yeah, well, driving out to the outskirts is annoying, and we got lazy. The original plan was to use it as sort of a base of operations. But why did you send Aerith and Neil there?
Vale's idea. They said we should make sure the place is ready. Just in case.
And you really thought I didn't need to know?
Vale's pretty cautious about this stuff, Quill. You are well aware of that. They told me not to mention it, so I didn't. But since they were there anyway, I had Neil do some prying. The safe house locations aren't easily tracked, as you know.
Locke, what did you do?
Look, I get that it's not ideal, but we're in a situation where we can't go around asking questions. We need to be able to get information without alerting others. And you know as well as I do that the moment we can't trust our colleagues, we can't trust anyone here. So using some underhanded tactics is our only recourse.
I'm not judging.
I am.
Well, you shouldn't, because the distrust wasn't misplaced.
What did Neil uncover?
The investigation into the car accident. They had surveillance footage of a person of interest. The one they think tampered with the vehicle that almost hit you. They placed a remote control device on the car while it was parked, and that gave them access to the system. And yesterday, all the data was destroyed.
What?
Neil went back to the system files later, intending to copy the evidence. All the surveillance footage and notes were gone or corrupted. They went back to the original source of the security footage and...
There is no evidence anymore. Anywhere, right?
What's more, the car is gone from the impound.
How can they delete evidence without causing a huge outcry?
Buy out the investigation team or threaten them into silence? Maybe there's some convincing internal excuse, or they moved it to a team that will help cover it up. I don't know. There was a clearance notice to have the car taken away and dismantled because the investigation team was done with it. It's an incredibly clumsy cover-up, but here in Nisa, there's not as much oversight as there is in a place like Cisalis. You don't have to be an expert at internal cover-ups to succeed.
So they either have someone inside to keep things quiet, or else we can't trust anyone in the safety department.
What even are our options at this point, then? It's not like we could keep living life as if people weren't actively targeting us. But if we couldn't even trust the safety department...
They're trying hard to back us into a corner, aren't they?
At this rate, just to protect ourselves, we may have to reveal what we've learned about the Arensal leak. And you know if that happens, we'll be giving up on ever finding the culprit. In the best case, there's enough public spotlight on the situation that we can enact stricter regulations. In the worst case, it gets labeled a smear campaign. Our current evidence isn't exactly rock solid.
If Neil is already in places he shouldn't be, maybe it's time to have him looking into the NRI for anything suspicious. I don't know if he can get into Stratum's systems.
That could backfire on us badly.
Do you think it can get much worse than it already is? We are at a point we're going to have to reveal our cards, and I'd rather a better hand first.
I'm not sure I want to find out how much worse it could get, Quill.
I think we may not have a choice.
Yeah. I guess I'll talk to him.
We won't report what happened here today. Looks like no one else saw it, courtesy of my being a corner flat, I guess. Doesn't seem to be much point in trying to get help now, and I'd rather not deal with the pain of reporting it anyway.
I agree. I'll talk to Vale on my way down. I guess we should catch them up.
Do more than catch them up. You should stay with them tonight. Or stay here.
I'll think about it. I also need to talk to Neil. I want him to run a check on the rest of the committee. We were the two biggest voices of opposition, but we weren't the only ones.
I don't want to think anyone would try to take out half the committee in one swoop. Especially not with the level of incompetent buffoons sent our way.
For most of us, that might be enough. Would have been enough for me if I didn't get lucky. But still, maybe we'll be lucky and that's the best they've got.
One hoped. Because even if I was barely competent, it was still better than total incompetence. Though if I was the best we had, it wasn't much comfort. Locke left afterwards, and for a while, Quill was busy sending a cryptic message to Reuben. I was left to my own devices and went out to the terrace to look at the damage done by that rook after collecting the sonic weapon they'd left behind. I'd never handled one before, of course. It felt heavy in my hands. I should give it to Quill. I wonder if he knows how to use a gun. It wouldn't be too far-fetched. He traveled through the wastes, and it wasn't exactly safe out there. They might have needed some kind of self-defense. While he was busy, though, I found myself sitting at the little table outside practicing my shields. I wanted to be able to with more confidence and not worry about if they'd hold. I was expecting her to try to do some psychometry on that gun to see if it could trace back to some kind of clue or something, but I guess not. And I wondered if there was a way to put one up and leave it unattended, so that became my focus for a while. Sci was pretty flexible after all, and I was good at problem solving. That is true. A little while later, and I'd set up a lattice framework around the door instead, just to see how long it stayed there, or if I started to feel strain from it after a while. Because I couldn't do much else, and I had to do something to stave off the sense of helplessness. Much, much later, Quill and I were standing in front of his window looking out at the city. I was leaning against him while he rested his head against mine.
Worried?
Obviously. How about you?
Mostly concerned with what this means for the city, what the fallout from all this will be. I don't know how or why we got to this point. I don't know what's next.
I took a deep breath before I turned to him, wrapping my arms around him. We'll get through this. Together. I promise.
If you weren't here, they'd already have won.
Maybe. But I'm a little worried if their not winning depends on me.
Me too, honestly.
I lightly tugged the front of his hair and he pulled me closer for a kiss. But neither of us spoke again. We went to bed late, and I didn't think either of us would sleep. I just lay there on my side, staring at what I could see of the shield I'd placed, shimmering in the dark. It was the last thing I remember before I finally dropped off to sleep.